Hello! In today's video, we're going to be looking at where to set your story and how to describe the location within a scene. Description is a balancing act. Too much and people skim over it and it gets in the way of the pacing. Too little and it seems like your character is walking through a void without any firm location. When you can see something in your own head, it's easy to think the reader will see it in theirs without much need for description. But the truth is, no one will ever have the same image in their head, no matter how many thousand words you put on a page. So don't bother trying to explain every little detail. Of course, you need to describe something which will later be mentioned or become intrinsic to the plot. The example I was given at university was everyone in the class was asked to stand up. We were told to imagine a rose. The teacher then said, "Anyone whose rose isn't white, sit down. Anyone whose rose is in a bunch and not on its own, sit down. Anyone whose rose is not in a vase on a table, sit down." And eventually she finished by saying, "Anyone whose rose is not made of wood, sit down." By the end of it, everyone in the lecture was sat down. Because something as simple as imagine a rose can conjure a huge variety of different images. This is why it's important to describe what's happening in a scene. You need enough that the reader can picture what's going on. This is especially important if the location is related to how the character feels. For example, if they're in a small room and it's making them uncomfortable because they're claustrophobic, or if they're sweltering hot which is causing the character to sweat, or they're somewhere like a theme park and the background noise keeps interrupting a conversation. It's especially important to describe a location if it's different to the initial expectation. What I mean by that is if you say a character is walking in a theme park in the middle of the day, the reader will automatically picture busy crowds, screaming from rides, the smell of food. But a few paragraphs later, you say the park is empty and deserted. This will force the reader to change their entire mental image, as well as question what they've read previously. In this instance, you would need to say the theme park is deserted near the beginning of the scene. That way, the reader knows exactly where they are from the start. Location can also be used to tell the reader about other characters. Let's say your main character walks into someone's house for the first time, and it's described as damp, musty, patches of mould in the corners. The reader can assume the person who owns the house maybe doesn't care too much about where they're living. But if the same description mentions that there are nice pieces of furniture and there's been an attempt to make the place look nice, it tells the reader the character is trying their best, but maybe circumstances are against them in some way. Another example of this might be, your character walks into someone's house and there are children's toys all over the floor and everything's a mess. The reader can infer the house owner is a parent or carer of a young child and is perhaps a bit overwhelmed by it. You can even use the same location to show a completely different character. Let's say they walk into the house and it's immaculately tidy, but there are neat colour-coded boxes of children's toys perfectly put away on tidy shelves. The reader can still infer the character has children, but they prioritise a clean house, or perhaps they have help in the form of another family member or even a paid cleaner. Like I said, you can't describe everything, nor should you try to, but choose one or two key points to describe so the reader knows what's important and can picture where the scene is taking place. Something which can immediately elevate the description of a location is including all 5 senses. People often only describe what the characters can see, but what they can smell and hear are just as important. Going back to my theme park description, the character can't just see the people on the rides, they can hear them screaming, they can hear the music from nearby gift shops, maybe even snatches of people's conversation as they go by. They can smell candy floss, hot dogs and donuts. If your character is in a seaside town, maybe they can't see the sea, but perhaps they can hear the waves or smell the salt in the air. Touch and taste can also be used to build a picture, but these are more situational. Your character would have to be physically touching something or eating something in order to employ these, but they are still good to include. A character in a haunted house might think about how cold the handle is of a door, or someone leaning against a tree might describe the rough texture of the bark. Don't try and include all 5 senses in every scene, because this can appear list-like and unnatural. Instead, choose 2 or 3 of the most relevant, and include them in your description to give the location a little bit more life. Another thing you might have heard of in regards to location is pathetic fallacy. Pathetic fallacy is where the weather matches your character's emotion. They're sad, so it's raining. They're happy, so it's sunny. They're angry, so it's thundering. Often used in films and TV, it can be a good technique to reinforce what your character is feeling, but it can also come across as cliché and overdone, so use with caution. Weather and time of day can make a huge difference to the tone and atmosphere of a location. A beach during the day could be a wonderful happy place with clear skies and sunshine, but at night it could be empty and cold with the cliffs looming overhead casting shadows. A park in the snow might be full of children making snowmen and sledding, while in the rain it's just a muddy patch of ground full of trampled flowers and rubbish. Think about the tone you're trying to create in your writing and pick a few key points to reflect that in the setting description. Of course, you don't have to match the setting to a character's mood. It can sometimes be interesting to contrast them, such as the opening of the film Jaws, where the main character is terrified and on edge, while everyone else around him is enjoying the summer sun. Or the famous dance number from Singing in the Rain, where Gene Kelly is professing how happy and in love he is, despite the downpour. If you're setting your story in a real place, it'll be a good idea to have reference images. The best thing to do is to go there yourself, take photos, make notes, soak in the atmosphere. Of course, this isn't always possible, but you can use Google Images, Google Maps, and plenty of other reference materials available. If you're setting your story in a made-up place, perhaps in a fantasy world, make sure it's consistent. Make notes about what you write, maybe even draw yourself a map. Readers do pick up on inconsistencies, and it can stop a good story from being great. If you want an exercise to practice your location and settings writing, try and choose any location you'd like, but describe it the opposite of how you'd expect. Make a sunny beach in the middle of the day seem frightening. Make a prison cell seem attractive. Don't include any characters or dialogue, just describe the location. If you have any questions or comments, drop them down below and I'll get back to you, or you can take a look at my other videos. Thanks for watching, and as always, happy writing!